Hey, how are you? Wow, is this thing live? Apparently it is. Hey, Campbell's Rambles back. Special lunchtime Thursday edition, live and direct on the BCX. All right, throw it up if you're down for that. I'm a salt and pep boy. I could use a dye on this hair, can't I? Hey, I'm Brian Campbell. I am the proprietor of this YouTube channel. This is the time each week. I guess the time is fluid lately, where I sit in this chair and ramble for a couple hours. And, apparently some of you guys like that. So I'm a man who loves cats, and that's about it. So thank you for joining me today, Thursday, August 7th of the 25s. And thank you for watching my insanely great intro. Yeah, shout out to Luke Nocito of the Main Card Minute there. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And shout out to Anthony Weller on guitar of the Nebraska Jam Band. Head change. That is also what I'm here for. Cat hair is everywhere. B Sizzle's back at it. And you know what? The combat sports scene's starting to heat up after a dead spot in the summer, as we are just a little over a week away from this UFC 319 event in Chicago, that really has me fired the heck up. More on that to come. One of my favorite Canadians, Brody Moret, when he's not out of line, is here. Yeah, it's making me dance too. It's making me dance white boy style, right? Because that's the only style that I got. A lot of Canadian heavy thoughts here. Do you prefer? Okay, there we go. Here we go. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. Thank you for joining me in all seriousness. All right. Thank you for being a patronizing patron of this here Patreon, and also for checking out what else we got this week on the BCX. Regis Prograis interview just dropped. He ain't washed, folks. He's here to tell you about it. Check that out, as Regis Prograis, fresh off of that Jojo Diaz all-action Fight of the Year contender victory on Saturday, and talking about big things, maybe Ryan Garcia in the future. Also, a fantastic episode, more than 2 hours yesterday of Inside the Box, if I do say so myself. BC Rafe Boogedy. Boy, did we get down and have a good time. We even did our Contender Season 6 Washed Welters draft. So you're really going to have to check that out and enjoy it. And yeah, thank you, Hank Hill. BC been goated since 96. Could you believe that I'm so old that I'm coming up on a 30th high school reunion? I mean, or not reunion. I would never go to that shit. But anniversary, 30 years. How old am I, dude? Dang, Reggie, stop biting. Hey, dude. All right, I got a cat that bites ankles, and I've got a program today in which I'll talk on a few different topics to start. Then I will open the floor up to you guys, and a couple reminders regarding the parent podcast that you all know me for. The good old M to the K, the Morning Combat, tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday, as we set the stage. Join us for UFC Apex, a pretty good middleweight main event between Cheyenne's hubby and good old Fluffy. Also, we will be looking at some other things. I forgot, but you'll be there. You'll see it. Maybe even you'll enjoy it. Okay. What do you got, Brody? All right. You and Rafe need to sell out to TKO so you can get that show made. I think you're right. I think you are right in that regard. I ain't never selling out. I'll cash in, but I won't sell out. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Also, don't forget, a week from today, live and direct from the Meadowlark Studios in Manhattan, the same seat where Pablo Torre finds out, we will give you UFC 319 pregame preview brought to you by Cuervo, LTBC, and a special third guest. Stay tuned, but don't miss it live. We'll probably get into that Devil's Reserve, if you know what I mean right there. All right. Yeah. All right. Hey, my guy, favorite president, Zachary Taylor's back. You've been watching since I had been watching you on the shows, or maybe you're talking to somebody else. I don't know. Yeah, maybe you're talking to Long Island Luke in the chat, but thanks for joining just the same. I hope everybody out there is doing well today. It's the summertime. That lawn's getting long. I get excited to mow that thing. Or I finally got my rider back on the road, right? It only took me 6 hours to change that tire. Don't trust me. Look, it has a heads up to all of you. Don't loan me any tools, any power tools. I will break them instantly on you. Thank you. Okay. I don't know how to fix anything. All right. Here's what I can fix. Combat sports. Okay. One circular word at a time. Reggie, you still here? Yo, Reg. Where you at? Reggie's a great guy, right? Have met him. So good to see him back on the pod today.
He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
Yeah, what meta? Did you ever read that stat that people say? Not a stat, but I guess a fact that it would take 2 weeks if you died in your own home for your cats to eat you. That's the most absurd, ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But I guarantee you, Reggie, be first in line to get to get a piece of it. I mean, he's biting at my ankles right now as we speak. All right, what do you got, Jake? What kind of Jake is it? It is not the Von Amsterdam kind, right? BC, you should design the MK studio. Pablo has a psychedelic look in there. Yeah, I would like to be a part of that. Thank you. Yo, what up, Nikki V? That's what I'm saying. What up, brother? We'll get to your question shortly. As always, the super chat, the fantastic grift known as the super chat is open. Maybe it gets your questions asked faster. Sometimes it doesn't because I get lost in my own thoughts. You ever have cat hair on your tongue? I'm like, I'm not making out with the cat. Somehow there's a cat hair everywhere. All right. There we go. There it is. So, I just got off the horn with Moses Atalma, who, of course, next weekend will be on that DAZN pay-per-view big time fight against 37-year-old Dillian Whyte. It's rare that I come off of an interview, especially the first time I'm talking to somebody. And I was pretty damn excited for this one. You'll see this chat in full next week on the BCX, where I came out of there like full speed ahead. This kid at 20 years old is absolutely the goods, has a great head on his shoulder. Never been past 6 rounds, though. And this is a legitimate test against Dillian Whyte, but you already got Turkey saying this kid could be next for the title, even with Joseph Parker out there, Ajit Kabayel, and, and an assortment of other heavyweights. But he's a southpaw. He's got insanely fast hands. He's got power. He's this is going to be special. All right. Joe from Run Dem Cheeks, my man, is the third guest on pregame preview going to be Reggie J. I wish he'd be snarky. He'd probably be all over that Devil's Reserve too. You better believe that. Brody's back. Good interview. Oh, thank you, with Regis. Regis is one of my favorite people to talk to, and I really wanted to get into the idea with him because, look, he got wobbled a bunch by Jojo Diaz, and my brethren's over there at the DAZN call, Todd Grisham, Sergio Moore, Chris Mannix, they were really playing up like, oh my God, the chin's betraying him. He's washed. And the thing is, he wasn't. Regis got in the best shape of his career for this fight under new trainer Kay Karoma, but he self-admittedly has some pretty bad footwork that made him looking like he was on Q Street, if you know what I'm saying. All right. All right. Made him look like it. But I thought that was a resurgent win. He's an aftermarket version of himself for sure. But at 36, he can certainly get himself back into a big fight with that performance. No doubt about it. There's some important text coming in. Hold on one second. Why don't you talk to Ray for a minute? All right?
A message to Brian Campbell. Do not ask me what is on the USB stick.
Thank you. Hold on. I'm almost there. Okay.
A message to Brian.
Thank you, Riff. Thank you. Here we go. All right, let's start this. Let's get full speed ahead. I'm going to give you the next 2 hours of my life. Thank you for taking it. Thank you for receiving it. Hopefully, we'll see Reggie again. Topic number 1. I want to get into this. Hey, Keyshawn Davis has gone public finally. He did put out that IG Live in recent days, his first sort of public response since the disastrous cancellation of his title defense against Edwin De Los Santos the same week in his home city of Norfolk that we all remember, where he was given the key to the city and they had all these public events. And then, of course, the fight gets canceled. There's the supposed brawl in the locker room with Nahir Albright, his former opponent, who had just upset his younger brother, Kelvin Davis, by split decision. And just a really hostile set of behavior from Keyshawn in the aftermath. And rightfully, I think on our show on MK, on all the shows, right, inside the on all the damn shows, we're like, can he bounce back from this? Yes, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort, because that was rough. And now I look back and I wonder if the interview I had with him during fight week was a bit of a harbinger to the doom that was to come, because he was almost belligerently cocky. And I like that, though. I like that. I like that extra sauce, that thick sauce when people have no regard for their opponent and all that stuff. But to see him finally do the full sit down with Ariel Helwani, and shout out to Ariel for how he handled this. I mean, look, Ariel is obviously one of the better interviewers the Combat Sports has ever seen. I was really impressed by what Keyshawn ultimately did. Not just the apology to many people, the youth of Norfolk, the Samson Lukowitz, the promoter of De Los Santos, who apparently Keyshawn slapped his hand away at the weigh-in, Tim Bradley, who he got into an argument with in the fighter meetings. Basically, this was Keyshawn admitting that he got too big for himself ahead of this fight. He was unprofessional in how he trained, which led to the weight miss. And ultimately, I really love the honesty of him saying, look, I'm from the hood. Not me, but him. I'm from the hood, and I had to put up that defense mechanism in the face of all this controversy and letting people down, because it's just sort of a natural, immature thing to do. He owned up to it all. He talked about being off of social media since that fight got canceled, and really just being there for his son and really trying to rehab his own spirit, his own mental health through his connection to God, through just, really giving himself some time. I mean, people can take that as what they want. To me, it felt pretty damn authentic when he dipped into the mental health side, referencing the real serious problems he had in the past. And really just the idea that we all are human. We all make sometimes disastrous mistakes. And a couple interesting things came out of that. Brody wants to jump in. Let's see what we got here. I disagree, BC. I like Keyshawn, but I think he has some issues. Bro is going to crash out anytime he gets too famous. I'm not sure I can trust him in the future. Look, I understand that response. I certainly do. And I'm not trying to be like, he's good now, everything's fine. But like, look, what do you have to do when you screw up? You've got to own up to it. He did that. He took the time to make sure he got into the right headspace first. I like the fact that he's like, look, I'm not coming back anytime soon until I know I'm ready mentally to come back. I think that's very important. And I thought it was really good to hear the people that did stay in his corner during hard times, from Floyd, Michael Vick, Allen Iverson, to even Teofimo Lopez, and the two of them having previously a very, back and forth relationship, because they could end up being opponents one day if the weight ever matches up. But it was Teofimo who came out after Keyshawn had that crash out and was just like, we need to support him, not get on him. One of those long aerial interviews, I think it was almost an hour. I think it's worth checking out if you at one point, like me and a lot of people were very impressed with the businessman Keyshawn Davis, the way he carries himself, the way he fights in the ring. But he's still got a long way to go, and to get this right, and to make sure that he's where he needs to be. But to your point, Brody, look, he's got to humble himself, and he is now, and he realizes how that happened, how he stopped being the person he was with all this fame coming at him, with all this attention, with all this opportunity. So look, I'm a sucker for when people get human, especially when they need to. And I thought he really humanized himself in that chat. But what do you got here, JR? Speak to me. I think he genuinely does have mental issues, but he's real about it and does seem authentic. Yes. I think he's got mental health challenges. A lot of us do. I mean, it's really hard in this day and age not to. For all the talk we do, and it's true to say, look, in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't strategize against it. The only people that went and got therapy were people that like really, really needed it. And he made a mention in there that it just, for some reason, this era, we're all sort of battling it. And I think that's true. I mean, maybe it's things in the food and the water. Maybe it's social media messing with our brains, and the, everything at our fingertips, the screens, all that stuff. There's a lot to this, but I was down for him doing that ultimately. And I think it is a good timing for him to get a break, because Top Rank's still trying to figure out their future TV situation and does not look to be coming back until 26. So we'll see what happens there. What do you got, bro? No, this is Lazy Bed. BC, you must return to Wednesday Rambles. I can't. Oh yeah, you're right. I can't have BCX versus BTL. I'm a big below the belt lines MMA fighting Mike Heck, Jed Meshew podcast. I'm a man, says Lazy Bed, not an amoeba. I can't split myself into. Well, maybe you have to watch this after the fact, or maybe their show after the fact. Hey, choose your poison. This was the time slot where it did work. Yes, below the belt lines. By the way, guys, wow. Speaking of that, let me let my cat out. All right. He'll probably be back, but that's how we do it. Why don't you guys talk to this guy?
Jim, I gotta tell you something. Are these guys Russian, or are they just in a hurry?
4 rounds to 3. Era Slandy Lara. Jim, I got to tell you something. There we go. Did you guys see Brendan Schaub's response yesterday to Hainato Money Moicano? This all started with Moicano not wanting to take the money, Schaub coming out and ripping him, which, it's definitely fair to rip Moicano in the spot, because if you don't take the money, everyone else is going to get more money, and you don't gain anything by being a company guy. We've been up and down the road on that. But then you had Moicano on Ariel Show just absolutely eviscerating Schaub and, dunking on him with the comedy rips. But to see Schaub's lengthy contradictory response was a little bit embarrassing and lame, to be fair. It really was. It just made no sense, to be fair. It just really made absolutely no sense. But it's wild. It's wild. What do you got, Chinchilla? 90s news, Howard Stern to be officially canceled by SiriusXM. I saw that. And while everyone seems to be, or not everyone, there seems to be a portion that are doing the, went woke, went broke BS, but like also the guy's been there for 20 years and he's making 20 million a year. So maybe they felt it was time where they weren't getting back what they want, what they wanted in the end. But you can't be my age without having gone through a serious Howard Stern run. And it was a memorable time in the 90s, man. It really was. And thank you, Andrew Nance, Reggie, the GOAT. There he goes. All right. We're going to get to your questions. Let me get through my topic. So we'll see what happens next with Keyshawn Davis. I actually would like a Nahir Albright rematch. I thought that the interesting part, maybe the only issue I had with Keyshawn, and not even an issue because nobody knows unless you were there, but he basically said he never did anything to Nahir Albright in the locker room. He basically accused Albright of manufacturing a story that the two Davis brothers came in and accosted him physically, when in reality, according to Keyshawn, it was like a 10-second incident in which security jumped in right away and pushed him out of the locker room. I don't know. I wasn't there. All in all, a horrific look for Keyshawn back then. But again, I like the way he ultimately tried to clean it up and tried to move forward. Let's give the kid a shot. 319, and specifically Chimaev. Hold on, we gotta pause this. Chinchilla, what do you got for me? I once partied with Artie Lang. Is that before or after that nose turned a weird shape? True story. Did it involve hookers and heroin or just a lot of cocaine? I don't know. Only Chinchilla knows that. Yeah, Brody, to close on that, Albright was snitching on live television. Shake my head. I want to find out the truth on this, because basically Keyshawn's like, look, I understand, because Keyshawn believes Albright lied. And he says, I understand why he lied. He wanted to get himself a payday. He wanted to get his family more money. He wanted to put himself in another thing. I don't know who's right. I mean, but I think you settle that with the fight. Their first fight was really, really close and was a majority decision win for Keyshawn until it was turned into a no contest when he failed for weed. 4 years just for weed? Damn, right? Right? Am I the only one? Right. Michael K. Do you think Keyshawn hype will be the same when he comes back? No. And he even referenced that. It's going to be difficult for Top Rank in the short term to promote him. But I think that can be fixed in one fight. What I mean is, I think he probably takes a smaller purse. You put him as a co-main. You don't go to his hometown here, and you give him a comeback, a fight. I wouldn't mind, again, if that was Albright, to try to maybe, that you can sell that a bit too, but humble him a bit, give him a chance to say the right things and have a performance that reminds us of his greatness. And I think now that he's done the apology part, if he goes in there and handles his business and gets back in line and gets back on track, and maybe is better off for the setback ultimately because it humbled him, maybe it got him closer to God and his family. I mean, like these moments, these losses in life can really be lessons, as you always hear John Kavanaugh say, but I think he'll be fine in the end, is what I'm saying. Okay. There we go. Brody, partying with Artie Lang and living to tell about it is crazy. Yeah. I need more information from you, Chinchilla. All you're giving me is prior to the nose. Okay. There you go. There it is. All right. I'm starring a lot of these good questions that are coming in. I'm going to hit you up pretty soon on here, guys. All right. One more on Keyshawn here from Michael Kie, a newcomer in this chat, or maybe he's a first time, long time, and maybe he's ready to love me long time. I don't know. Was that offensive? Maybe, but here we go. What do you got, Kie? Maybe Keyshawn versus Josh Padley at 140. I saw DB3 took photos with Hearn recently. Not sure if that signals anything in the future. So they did address that. Ariel brought it up. It was just Keyshawn saying, Keyshawn put over Eddie Hearn's heart and basically said that Hearn reached out to him a few times during this process and really encouraged him to get well and get back. Does that double from a promoter as like a, let me drop a seed, let me plant a seed that I got your back? I'm a player's promoter. I mean, it could be. It also could be Eddie Hearn having a good heart. So we'll see where that goes in the future. Still a Top Rank fighter. Let's give Top Rank a chance to carry that out. I don't know. I like the Nia Her Albright fight. I really do. I think it's central casting. I think it's absolutely perfect. Back to Khamzat Chimaev. The most intriguing thing about this, and I don't mean stylistically, in this great fight on paper against DDP, one of the most anticipated main events for me in a long time, maybe since like Max Elia or Islam Volk 1. This is going to be something special, but separate from that. I just want to, like everyone else, I just want to see Chimaev in a title fight. I just want to see him pushed past the early going. He's never gone past the third round. We saw him in an extended war against Gilbert Burns, one that I actually thought he lost, by the way. One where I feel like he took on too much oncoming traffic to try to prove that he's a warrior at a different time in his career. His career has been like this because of all of the personal setbacks, the illnesses. Was there travel visa issues? Was there multiple COVID issues? There's a lot going on. Finally, we get him into a title fight, and luckily it's coming fresh off of an absolutely devastating performance against Robert Whittaker there, where you're like, oh my God, if he can do that to that guy, he can probably do that to almost anybody. I just really want to see him have a chance to show us exactly who he is. This is the perfect matchup for that, especially if this goes to the championship rounds. Now, him and DDP did a ton of media this week, a week out. It feels a little old school. I love that UFC's actually putting some effort into this. You had DDP in Chicago doing every possible TV station, podcast opportunity, throwing the first pitch out at the Cubs game, all of that good stuff. And then you had Chimaev doing, a pretty good series of interviews. Like Brett Okamoto looked like he was in Chimaev's kitchen and sitting down at the center island doing that. Couple interesting takeaways. Chimaev says, no doubt he's going to be able to go 5 rounds and he's ready for it. He doesn't believe DDP is a good wrestler. He thinks that he's going to absolutely dominate there, something that we certainly have to see there. He says, look, stop with these rumors that I'm going to win this title and retire. I need the money, man. I thought that was funny and interesting. But how about him saying his goal is still to become a 3-division champion? Like, wow. Because I think the biggest lament in the Chimaev experience for me up to this point was that we didn't see him fight for a welterweight title first. There was that time when Kamaru was still champion where I actually was like, hey, UFC, you might want to just throw Chimaev into a title fight like 3 or 4 fights in. Remember, he came on the scene in 2020. He was one of the heroes of the pandemic. Shout out to Billy Q. So were you, Tampa Zone. But, this is one of those guys that potentially could float weight classes. He's saying he can still, with his new nutritionist and coaches, that he believes he can still get back down to 70. And he's like, Jack Della Maddalena, let's do it. Somebody mentioned, what if Islam wins the title? He's like, let's do it. Could you imagine a scenario in which he won this championship at middleweight? And whether it was 1 fight later, 2 fight, however it happened, that they really did give him this chance to go fight Islam or JDM down there. And then he's like, oh yeah, and by the way, light heavyweight, whether it's Ankalaev or Barrera, I'm willing to do the same thing too. Somebody's going to get a chance one of these days to become the first 3-division champion. Will it be Barrera at heavyweight? I would prefer Barrera getting that chance if he went back and fixed the glitch against Ankalaev. But if Khamzat can come out and be nasty against DDP and do this, I mean, there wouldn't be necessarily justification for UFC to throw him into these other title fights, but the fact that this is his stated goal, it's exciting. It's got me fired up. What do you got, Brody? I'm confused why people are so excited about this. What the hell is wrong with your Canadian ass, Moret? Khamzat about to run through this guy. Total mismatch. All right, we got to see how many other people have watched tape of DDP and been like slow, lumbering, awkward. And then he does that to you. We saw Whitaker kind of handle DDP early until DDP walked right through him. I get what you're basically trying to say, which is Chimaev so good, this may not even be a fight. Let's not get excited about it. Chimaev has to answer a lot of questions. And I don't think DDP is going to succumb as, quickly as Robert Whitaker and Kevin Holland and some others have done, even with Chimaev's incredible ability to take over the fight early, take you right down, and put you in peril. I have no problem people predicting Chimaev to win, but I guess you guys believe this. Chimaev in under 2 rounds. Wow. What are the odds on this? What are the damn odds on this? In fact, off the top of my head, I really don't even know. So this is going to be fun for me too. Okay. DraftKings minus 180 Chimaev. Chimaev is as high as minus 225 on FanDuel. Plus 150 is DDP. So I'm certainly down with that. But isn't that what makes this matchup so good? You've got one of your pound for pound best dominant champions on I don't want to call it a historic run, but a very, very great run through former champion, just running through these guys, getting through hard fights. Tell him, Nikki V, DDP going to make it difficult. Look, if Chimaev does this, like maybe we do have to have conversations about him floating to different divisions, but we really just need Chimaev to be healthy to get late into a fight and to be able to fight back to back without having to sit out long. Interesting comments by Dean Thomas, by the way, who's like, this could be the worst thing to happen to the UFC for this guy to win the title because the title won't move. It'll stay stagnant. It's time now for Chimaev to not have the issues of the past. It's time for us to see this guy. And interesting that Sean Strickland is so aggressively planting a seed for a future fight between them by bringing up the times that they've sparred at Extreme Couture. When we did, meaning MK, when we did that Room Service Diaries sit-down interview with Coach Eric Nixick in the cage there, we were talking off camera, and it's the same sentiment that was heard in that gym from those that were there for the Chimaev versus Strickland sparring. They were basically saying that Chimaev maybe didn't look like a killer in those, but sparring is sparring. So who knows? All right. I'm trying to star as many of these good questions as you guys are giving me off topic so we can bring them up shortly. What do you got here? Joe of Run Dem Cheeks fame. What's more likely, Chimaev becoming a 3-division champ or Gane beating Tom by leg lock? Eesh, right? Eesh. I mean, it is interesting, though, that Chimaev, like Aspinall, who both have scored dominant early wins consistently, we have to see certain questions answered for both. Largely going deep into fights, stamina, that type of stuff. And, for Tom, also his ground game is very underutilized because he hasn't had to use it. But to answer your question, it's the former. The only thing I don't want, look, anybody can beat anybody, and it's fun sometimes in the sport when things happen. Bisping knocks out Rockhold, and it's like, holy shit, did not see that coming. Rockhold had just absolutely dominated him 2 years earlier, kicked the S out of him. But you love when that happens. This is a fight where I'm openly saying I won't love if this happens because if Gane exploits Tom and wins this, coming off of a fight against Volkov where he definitely lost and got the win, though, and coming off of that crappy performance against Ngannou, that crappier performance against Jones, and then would give John Jones the fuel to be like, told you guys. Oh, by the way, Gane Jones 2 coming to the White House lawn. I'll miss that. Miss me with that. I'm currently missing that. Thank you. All right. One more from Brody here. The heavyweight division is so bad that Khamzat versus Aspinall might be the fight to make in 2 years. I get your jokes. You're not far off, by the way, on that. Not far off. Danger Mouse jumping in from Just Bleed radio fame and the UK. And I did say that before, and I meant it on MK. Guys, your interview on JBR with Ann Evans was great. I mean, a lot of that is Ann Evans because he's a great British talker, but you guys asked very good questions, so shout out to the JBRs. I don't know if I'll ever be on that show, but I will rock this I will rock this hat. Okay, let me get this on. All right, Just Bleed Rabies. There we go. There it is. This is the warmest hat ever. Have I told you guys about the Sherpa skin they put in here? I think Kenzing Norgay wore that when he got to the top of Everest with Sir Edmund. All right, am I dating myself? Yeah, probably. All right, that topic's to bed. The third one, it'll be quick, is what a 24 hours for ESPN, by the way, in the media broadcasting wars, getting NFL Red Zone, giving ESPN, giving NFL 10% of ESPN. And then, oh, by the way, TKO drops in and is like, we're going to sign a deal to put all WWE PLE / pay-per-views on ESPN programming to the tune of like 350 million. Is that a year? Wow. I don't want to say I didn't see it coming, but being somebody that worked at ESPN for almost 12 years, being someone that, I'm not doing the Barry Horowitz, but that like around the time that Jonathan Coachman on SportsCenter really played a key role in getting WWE coverage on ESPN, for better or for worse. And then, I kind of piggybacked off of that and helped, was really the I guess the pusher behind the scenes to get a vertical page built on .com to begin coverage there. I had a fun run. I really don't like the wrestling product today. I tried to watch the big moments at SummerSlam. There is a TKO Walmartification going on of WWE. But with all that said, it's a pretty damn massive deal for TKO, who are spreading their empire across, purposely across every single network. And it is interesting that Mark Shapiro, who's responsible for the UFC renegotiations, is sort of, stuck on third base, so close to finalizing it, yet Nick Khan slides in and gets this WWE deal done. But it does make a lot of sense. WWE is already using a lot of ESPN talent like Peter Rosenberg, like Joe Tessitore. There are so many people in high executive positions at WWE who were part of ESPN back when around 2016, in 2015, ESPN started to sort of cover WWE for the first time or show up at WrestleMania and all that stuff. There's problems with it too. Sure. I don't know if people want to tune into ESPN and get a WrestleMania post show or what have you. There's also a lot of things going on in WWE, which maybe mirror what's going on in UFC in this TKO era of just extreme price gouging and all of that. But this is pretty damn massive. And it is interesting how WWE has quickly become the golden child in the TKO portfolio, while UFC is, I don't want to say down, but, not shining at the moment. I'm really hoping that when this deal comes through, or the multi-tiered deal for UFC, and their different partners that they're going to have, that it really, and that's why I put that question into Luke on whatever segment we did the other day on MK about the new deal. You want this new deal to kickstart a new fun and creative era. And if part of that deal is big fights on Netflix and them needing to give really big cards on Netflix, hopefully that'll be conducive to a turn away from this watered down era. But that's not nothing for WWE to get a deal this big and now be, in the US, meaning that outside of the US, Netflix has the complete package of WWE, but in the US, to have all of these PLEs, these pay-per-views on freaking ESPN, holy crap. Wild times. All right. That's it for me. Now it's time for you guys. I open up the floor. We'll get to your questions. Danger Mouse. Thanks, BC. We appreciate the shout out. And yes, and expected invite soon. Thank you. Shout out to all you guys, especially Lazy Bed in his Midwestern teenage voice. But I like that guy a lot too. Absolutely do. What do you got, Saul? Louisville's finest super chats open. Thank you for playing. Saul is the realest, just the realest one. John Gone too. You can't keep them. You can keep them shits, Brad. Yeah, believe me, that's the worst case scenario for the heavyweight division. The absolute worst case scenario. Let's hope it's not. But Saul's a real one. Shout out to your brother Manuel Jr. Shout out to Gutters all over Kentucky. Thank you. I mean, does anyone rock MK better than Saul? Well, speaking of MK merch, let's go to morningcombat.shop. These August exclusives are hot right now. Vaping is for closers. You can pick up that shirt. You can get the Beavis and Butthead, which is my favorite piece of MK merch I've ever owned, by the way. Average Joe Art did a fantastic design on that. All of my neighbors have fallen for it and thinking it was actually Beavis and Butthead t-shirts. And then I'm like, no, this is my podcast. Biatch. Right? No? All right. Maybe I didn't need to put the biatch at the end of it. Let's continue on down the road here. Let's go. What do you got for me, people? What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? Banned from YouTube. Then why are you here, sir? Resume reviews, watch-alongs, and goon service diatribes all need to be brought back to regular MK programming. BC eats corn like this the long way. Yeah. I've heard that before. Yeah, I want all that. I want all that shit back. And I to be fair, I would have thought we would have had it back already, but then you already know. Then in 2024, the rebranding, the resuscitation of MK became a lot harder than we expected it. And I'm sorry about that, but it was a shocker to us too. And in hindsight, we're very lucky to be where we are now, to be fair. And I'm very thankful to Brian Daly, formerly of Showtime, now All the Smoke Fight, the DraftKings Network, Meadowlark. I'm very thankful to be where we are right now. The show is healthy. We have some very good sponsorships, Cuervo being, one of the biggest ones, and having the ability now to do pregame previews, even though it's part of our sort of regular 2 shows per week. At least we're doing them right now. I would have thought we would already had our own Funhouse studio by now, but this, as you already know, this sports media climate right now is rough. It's very rough right now. It's a very rough time in this industry. So the fact that we're still here, and the fact that this new era has brought somewhat of a new MK, and maybe to some of you that's not, that's more worse than better, but it's different, and I'm trying to embrace that. I really love the Meadowlark studio, and we're not going on the road anymore, but we'll see what happens. Sometimes I feel like we're one more big sponsorship away from some big ish happening. And if you don't think we're definitely talking behind the scenes, pitching these same ideas you are. We have our sort of priority list of what would be next as we continue to gain more sponsors and continue to be out there. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have an independent voice, at least in that show, in this realm right now where it's getting harder to have that. So thank you guys as always for having our back. Yeah, there it is. All right. Nikki V, my lunch break is over. Got to go back to work. Peace out, donks. I'll be listening. Let's see if BC answers my box in a history question. I probably will. It's just, this interface. I'm like 47 now. I got to take it slowly here. It's like trying to pay for gas with a credit card in 1986. You're like, what am I doing here? Right. All right. Brody's back. BC, I am not trolling when I say this. I think Vince McMahon returns to TV in the next 2 years. I think this is... They have nothing to lose from it. Everyone will tune in for a Vince return. I think part of when it happens, and it will happen, guys, it will happen. Unless this Janelle Grant thing goes to trial, and unless it becomes a disaster, which, if you read the lawsuit, it feels like it very much could. But you know how sometimes these things go. Could there be a massive settlement coming just to clear this off the deck? I don't know. Depends on the Grant side. Depends on how it would go. But do I feel like they're starting to soft launch this? Do I feel like Triple H in interviews when he's asked about Vince, he's like, oh, allegations are allegations. It's a difficult thing. Yeah, I believe they're setting the stage. Does Brock Lesnar coming back right now and the company response, which hasn't been great? First, Triple H shows up to the post show in replacement of the press conference. And I'm not trying to say those WWE press conferences were ever great or fully necessary, but to cancel them the same weekend that Brock's coming back, you're saying something to us with that. And then Trips comes to the post show and the crowd's cheering for Karrion Kross. We want him. And they're like, Trips like, yeah, you want Brock, you got him. That's not what we're talking about, dude. And then for Trips to say, we're doing this because John Cena wanted this. And then John Cena gets accosted on the street corner by a TMZ type interview. And he's like, well, as I've been saying for 25 years, WWE deals it and I play the cards, which is his way of saying, I didn't ask for this necessarily. And then suddenly Triple H is on ESPN and they're changing the story again. Yeah, we see through this. Okay. I think we also see through that Vince is going to come back. And I actually think revisionist history is what it is. The final 5 years, you could even say, of Vince McMahon's booking were, in my opinion, awful. And it drove me out of the genre from a entertainment / podcasting standpoint. But it's not great right now. We are seeing the limitations of the lack of creativity and the big moments of this Triple H era. And it's hard because I always fought against Vince's booking in my final years as a podcaster and was like, in Trips we trust, he's the savior. And what I didn't realize, and shout out to CBS Sports' Jack Crosby for very early on getting my ear on this, we were giving Triple H too much credit for what he was doing in NXT during that absolute golden period of booking from 2015 to 2019, when, to be fair, in hindsight, the late Dusty Rhodes, Shawn Michaels, Regal, these guys had a much bigger role than we realized. So I wonder if some of the apathy from the hardcores to what this TKO era has become for WWE creativity and booking, maybe Vince gets a pretty big pop if and when he does come back. I mean, I went back after Brock returned and everyone's tweeting out the allegations again in the screenshots, and you go back and read a lot of this. It's absolutely disgusting. It's allegations. Who knows who's right? We're going to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he'll be back. All right. Jackson Black, why is Ariel Helwani so lame? Well, it varies by user. Okay. Shout out to Ariel. Competitor in this game. But are there cringe moments? Well, I think there's cringe moments for all of us. So yeah, there you go. There you go. More to come on the Patreon portion of the show. Just kidding. All right. BC equals Mr. Best Caster. Thank you, KX30. Thank you. Thank you. J of J Allen fame. Watching combat sports is going to be another mortgage payment. It's already there, folks. Try being a boxing fan who doesn't illegally stream. You're going to realize how much you're paying in the end. I mean, as much as I love Moses Talma versus Dillian White next Saturday, that's a freaking pay-per-view in the States. And it ain't $20, folks. Good Lord. The balls on that man to put that thing out there. All right. Starring all your good questions. I gotta pick up these. Oh, here we go. Chinchilla, BC, would you ever do a boxing watch along? It's not that I don't want to. It's just that CBS Sports is my main employer, and I have to obviously put them first above my YouTube channel or even MK. And, I'm during massive fights, I'm either taking down notes for the recap I'm going to write, doing the live blog, prepping for HQ. So it's not something I can do. I can do post-fight reactions, which I've done for a handful of the biggest fights. And those, by the way, get the most traffic, get the most dollars from a YouTube creator standpoint. But sometimes that can be hard because after a massive fight that will end at 12:30, 1 a.m., I'm doing the recap. I'm jumping on HQ. I'm then writing a post-fight column, and suddenly it's 3 a.m., right? And I must be lonely. All right, baby. All right, here we go. Let's get into this. Joe is my man. Run them cheeks. This guy's the best. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Are there any music collabs that we never got, sound good, but probably would have been a disaster? Example, Paul McCartney and Jim Morrison. Fair point right there. I think their personalities would have clashed too much. Yes. But then again, would I have seen coming the collaboration between Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson in the early 80s, particularly with that hit Say, 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 which I think is one of like the best MTV videos that never gets mentioned among that. I love that video. It's basically them acting out almost like a mini movie. And they, Ebony and Ivory, Say, 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 it kind of worked for that era, which, it's something I never would have imagined if I would have been alive back in that day. Collabs are interesting. And, I mean, some of them I'm a sucker for. Leather and Lace by Stevie Nicks and Don Henley. Hell yeah, right? You know what I mean? Or not Don Henley. Oh, yeah, Don Henley. I think, inevitably, if Jimi Hendrix hadn't died, and I say this a lot because he died at 27 in 1971, a key member of the 27 Club, if not the face of it, to be very fair. Jim Morrison up there, Janis Joplin as well, Brian Jones, on and on and on. Blind Owl Wilson of the Canned Heat too. I mean, there's a lot of them on there. I believe, because right around the time Jimmy died is when Miles Davis got ahead of the game on jazz fusion with electric guitar leads. Listen to the On the Corner album is such a great jazz fusion masterpiece. And obviously Miles was so ahead of the game, and I don't, with Bitches Brew as well, but that's almost its own avant-garde, unique thing to itself, especially the way it was recorded, how they just picked out all these different pieces and combined them together after the fact. It was like so insanely manufactured together to create that. But all signs seem to indicate that Jimmy was noodling into the jazz area at the time of his death. a Miles and Jimmy thing, I don't see how it wouldn't have been a masterpiece. But to your point, I wonder if some could have sounded good and never would have got there. I think of it more not as like a one-off on an album or a song, but like brief. One of my favorite tropes in rock history in the late 60s, particularly, and then it happened in the 70s a lot through the, a lot of copycat movements, is the super groups. A lot of these super groups would tend to only last one album for a lot of reasons, whether we're talking about Blind Faith, Derek and the Dominoes. And then there's a lot that people forget about. Like I stumbled across this awesome record of a super group that had like Jack Bruce from Cream, Leslie West from Mountain, and Ginger Bick. I'm like, holy crap, I never knew this was a thing. But I do, there's a few things I wonder more in the realm, not to get off track from your question, but a lot of the what ifs that you hear in music history. One of the what ifs, Jimi Hendrix approaching his good friend Stephen Stills and saying, we'd like you to replace Noel Redding in The Experience. Wow. Imagine that. And oh, by the way, the second Stephen Stills solo album, which I think was generally referred to as 2, even though it's actually technically called Stephen Stills, just like his first solo album. I always hate when people do that. Peter Gabriel did that. All Peter Gabriel's first 5 solo albums were named Peter Gabriel. And it's like, we only call them by the picture on the front of it. But Jimi Hendrix actually played on a track, and so did Eric Clapton as well, which is interesting. I think it's the only album ever where Clapton and Hendrix appeared, only studio album ever where they appeared on the same time. But when you hear all of those rumors of what super groups almost came together, or this person almost replaced that person, it always makes my mind, go crazy and imagine the what if right there. Yeah, McCartney and Morrison isn't going to work out, but I'm trying to think of what else would really stand out in that regard. I'll have to keep going. But great question as always, Joe. You're really making me want to start this music podcast. All right, you are. Back to Brody. It's quite possible that Vince is still booking the show currently, like a mob boss calling the shots from prison. I doubt that. I mean, there's also like conspiracy theories that Ari and Khan came in and their intention was to get Vince out of there. I don't know. It's funny to say that though. It's pretty funny to say that. Oh yeah. I appreciate you guys jumping in on your work day. I don't really give you a heads up at one time. This is going to be, sometimes my life is too fluid, but you guys are great there. Vital George 85. Did I say that correctly? Hey there, BC looking grizzly. Yeah, I gotta shave. I gotta get 3 things going. I gotta trim this down. Basically, I'm waiting for the next offer. I'm waiting for the next opportunity on there. Okay, let's go. Let's call some fights. I gotta get this down. I gotta color this one more time, and then I gotta get the fade. But I'm just a 47-year-old man trying to stay alive in this business. It ain't always easy. Okay, it ain't. A lot of things going against me lately, but you got to fight the good fight. All right, there it is. Back to our questions here. Marc Antoine Berriot du Soleil, my guy from French Canada. Appreciate you, Quebecois. Great question. MAD, let's go. Okay, let's go. Best pre-Revolver Beatles song. As I always say, Revolver, probably the best Beatles album, although I think the only one you can really rate above it is Abbey Road, which I do. I'm an Abbey Road stan. I do get, like Bob Saget would always say, the best Beatles album is Sgt. Pepper's. My generation, I don't think can agree with that. But if you were alive, my dad was 12 in 1967. If you're alive and the Beatles were this up to a certain point and then they hit you with Sgt. Pepper, yes, I could say retroactively, you could say that's their best album. But I think the only real answers are Revolver, Abbey Road, or maybe, just maybe the White Album, because there's so much going on there. But I digress. Revolver was where it started to change. It was where they injected so much creativity, psychedelia, almost abstract avant into what they were doing right there. It's why it's so beautiful. So what is the best pre-Revolver song? And also to clarify, if anyone needs this, we're always going to go off of the titles of the original English releases to these albums because of the maddeningly confusing way rock and roll worked in the 60s, where some bands would have completely different albums in the States with different names and different collaborations than where they were in the UK. I'm talking about the UK releases here. So the album right before Revolver is Rubber Soul, which is, I mean, that was my favorite Beatles album for a long time in high school. Norwegian Wood is really the standout one in that album where you're like, that's a tease of something different to come from them. That is probably the best answer you could give off the top of your head. I think some old school cats, like my dad's age, my dad's era, they look at Yesterday as above everything else. And I think maybe for us, maybe for people more, younger, it's like very great song, very great. Young Paul putting his most sort of deep, heartfelt ballad out there, and George Martin's idea to combine an orchestra with that, which is kind of the hip thing to do in the early Phil Spector Wall of Sound, that sort of era of New York City pop creation. You could throw that in the conversation. I think you might be right on Norwegian Wood. It is just John Lennon's, for that time, what was that 1965? For that time to come off with such a cool sitar infused, thank you, George Harrison, pop song, that sort of weird lyrics about waking up after a one night stand in a woman's apartment and she's gone and you're sort of putting your pieces back together of how did I get here? What happened? You know what, dude? Marc-Andre Burial, that is a great, great answer. Can I top that? It's not a better. No, I can't even throw that one off. That's not even in the same category. That's the answer. Norwegian Wood is the answer. Thank you for playing. Well done, Mark. Thank you. Do they call you Marc-Andre? Marc Antoine? I don't know. Brody's back. I see a lot of hardcore fans saying the White Album is the best album BC Helter Skelter bangs. I think it's the wild card pick because it's their only double studio album. It's by far their most eclectic. And it really brings out the best of all three songwriters, in my opinion. Meaning there were eras of the Beatles' success in which certain people dominated more. If you watch the Get Back documentary, which showed the recording and the troubles they had in the Let It Be sessions, you'll notice that John was addicted to heroin, was rarely there. If he was there, he'd contribute a line to a song. But this was Paul's band to a fault, because that grudge between him and George, which led to George briefly leaving the band, which led to the band falling apart. And I didn't even realize until recently that George held that grudge all the way, meaning when they had that reunion in 95, 96 for the Beatles anthology, where they recorded those two new tracks, Free as a Bird and whatever the other one was, forgetting it off the top of my head, that there was still major contentiousness in the negotiations for that, where George just forever felt like John and Paul never realized what they had in him as a third songwriter. We're happy to throw a George track on, or in the later era, a couple George tracks on, but they never really featured him. Just like in the early going, John was by far the dominant member of this band. I'm talking Beatles for Sale era, Help era. John's songwriting was by far the consistent force in that band. But the White Album, which was written in sort of a weirdness, meaning that John and George really heavily influenced the band to take that sabbatical in India with the Maharishi to really get into the transcendental thing going on, the LSD, all of that. That's where a great majority of these songs were written. I really feel like this album showcases all three of those songwriters in such a beautiful light, showcasing their strengths. Paul really reaching back to his connection to old time music. He grew up with his father being a musician. You hear that in Martha, My Dear. You hear that in songs like that. John just being that grimy. I mean, John's guitar playing, which is either so underrated or so overrated. And then when you find out that he learned to play guitar on a 2-string one that he made in his house, it really informs the way he solos, the way he plays leads. Think of his work on Let It Be. It's so jangly. And not jangly in a 1965 Birds way, just uniquely jangly. But I think the White Album was really the last tour de force for John as a songwriter before the combination of Yoko and heroin really took away his greatness. Now, that greatness came back in his solo run at times, of course. But then we go back to George. by the time we got to Let It Be and Abbey Road, you know, George was an absolute force. In fact, some of the major songs that would go on the triple-sided All Things Must Pass record, the landmark solo debut for George that remains the best single album post-Beatle of the four of them. There were a few that were supposed to be worked out and added to Let It Be or Abbey Road that Paul ultimately shot down and nixed. But if you ask me what George's best song is, the part of my heart would always say something off of Abbey Road. But in reality, his best song is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And, you know, Eric Clapton played on that. Him coming to the sessions for that was a big part of starting to alleviate the early tension that was really bubbling. But still, on that record, we got to see how great George was becoming as a songwriter. The weirdness, the eclecticness, it's got everything. I'll allow it. I'll allow it as a favorite. All right. Rubber Soul is my favorite for a long time. Then I realized what Abbey Road really was. Revolver sometimes tries to steal that from me. We'll see. What do you got, Mark? Underrated George song, I Want to Tell You on Revolver. One of my favorite. George is the most, I always identified with George the best because his songs, he wrote so many good brokenhearted songs. Now, John to himself is the best. John is always the perfect antithesis to Paul. Paul is too lovey and goofy, and that's why Paul's solo career, while brilliant, is often subtly maligned by experts because it's so, you know, charming and upbeat, whereas obviously John was the perfect counter to that. You think of a song like Getting Better. Upbeat Paul, have to admit, it's getting better. You know, and then downtrodden John, can't get no worse. That's them to a cue. But if you really look at the enduring themes of George's songs, it's heartbreak. It's being the youngest member, the most underappreciated. And while these songs are more written about his love losses than his tension with the bandmates, I want to tell you, this is probably a big part of why I identified as a romantic high schooler who kept striking out with the ladies, right? That was sort of like, you know, George really had a number on songs like Something, on songs like I Want to Tell You. I Want to Tell You is one of those sleepers. You know, not a 5-star song out of 5, but it's very beautiful in its own right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Jackson Black. Sgt. Pepper is my favorite album. Yeah, again, I think you could say that, but I think, I don't know. It's so equally overrated and underrated. It's obviously a 5-star record, but it's so attached to its times because of the groundbreaking nature of it, in my opinion. All right. MAD is back. The White Album is not even in my top 5. No flow between songs, but the album has some of their best songs. It's weird. So it's actually the no flow between songs, in my opinion, that gives it its charm. In the same way that Let It Be stands out as really, I mean, I have no problem with Let It Be being a top 3 album. And I think it's because it's a return to their roots. They recorded most of the songs live, and it's sort of like them getting back into like, we're not trying to over polish this. We're trying to show you the warts. It's maybe why some of the greatest moments of the Let It Be album are that they put in some of those, you know, off the cuff remarks that they're saying during the recording. You know what I mean? Sweet Loretta Pine, she thought she was, you know, that kind of stuff, right? Rosetta. But it's because the White Album was, I mean, Sgt. Pepper was their first one to be all over the place, but it really was so all over the place. And it's just the totality of that many songs being that different of genres. I could see it. I mean, I always say when people are always like, you're going to be on a desert island for the rest of your life, I'll give you 3 albums. Even though the White Album is not even in my, I personally wouldn't even say it's in my top 5. I actually could argue with that with you, because I'd go Revolver, Abbey Road. Man, I've been on such a Beatles for sale kick lately. And I know that's not really a top 5 album. I just love it so much. I've always loved Rubber Soul and Help. I've always loved Let It Be. I could certainly make an argument that it could be out of your top 5. But if I'm on an island and I'm getting a double album with those many hits, you know, those many unique tracks on there, I mean, I love Savoy Truffle. I love so much. God, there's so many great moments on there. So many eclectic ones. There you go. Thank you. Brody. BC, are you familiar with Harlan Williams from Half Baked? That guy's amazing. To be fair, all of those guys. I mean, there's 10 out of 10 performances across the board in that film. And I see Harlan still lingering and still popping up. He's always funny to me. Jim Brewer, it could be hit or miss at times, but I love the guy. But that's always going to be my favorite Chappelle. Yeah, I love the Chappelle Show like anyone. I love his stand-up comedy, but who he was in that film, that film just spoke to there's not really, with the exception of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, I don't think I've watched a VHS tape more times than I watched Half-Baked. Thank you. That's my editorial for today. Brody is back from Canada and here in the chat. What do you got? BC, we need to have a serious conversation about Boots. Does this guy, does this guy want to fight anyone? I think he gets crushed by the top guys at 54. All right, let's take off that last sentence. Leave off the last S for savings here, Brody, please. All right, what are you trying to do to me? He's an incredible talent. Has he been mismanaged or mispromoted or made? Yeah. I mean, he got a contract to be an exclusive Showtime fighter, but he, back when Showtime was on top and PBC was on top, but chose not to sign directly with Al Heyman and the PBC. And in hindsight, I think that became a problem. There was a conspiratorial argument. Did that prevent him in his welterweight rise from getting big fights against the big names back when PBC had this overflowingly large welterweight division? I do wonder that. I do. I mean, yeah, he came up and beat the right guys that, he was supposed to, that really teased us that he's going to be great. And oh, by the way, when he did get a chance to unify titles against Imantas Staniotis, did he go out there and absolutely show you in his final welterweight fight exactly who he is? Yeah, he's great, Brody. Okay. But people are pissed off about him saying he needs like 2 tune-ups at 54 before fighting a big name. Boots, you're going to be 33 before this. I mean, if you keep this up, you are. And I feel bad for him. I feel bad that more often than not, he's been on the outside looking in. Sometimes he has made decisions that you could argue got in his own way as well. If I'm him, I'm calling Mr. Turkey, and I am not turning down a fight. I am right now, while still in my physical prime, showing you exactly who the hell I am. I don't consider Terence Crawford a 54 anymore, even though he still has a title. I think this 68 fight with Canelo will either be his last, or they'll get a rematch, or if Bud wins, it somehow spins to some other massive fight. But I think if you put all these guys at 54, which is such a deep division, arguably the deepest right now in the sport, and you put them in a tournament, my money's on Boots. I'd probably put Virgil Ortiz second. I'd probably put Fundora third in those power rankings. And then you have a mix after that of, a really fun mix of names coming and going. And I saw that Jermell Charlo just called out Fundora. Hey, PBC, make that fight. Let's go. Make that fight, okay? Let BC call that fight. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Banned from YouTube is back here for the Tang Bang. Also, what the hell is the Tang Bang? Is that a racist comment? Also, BC, do you and Luke, and Lesser Luke, you mean the LIL, plan on bringing back rum service retirees? It was a great show. Are you talking about the 1.0 band or the 2.0? The 1.0 being Luke and I in a hotel room teasing to get fired by telling old rambunctious stories, or the 2.0 of us on the couch in the sit-down Wayne's World basement. I'd love both to come back. It's all dependent upon us getting a studio. We're going in the right direction. But what we had with not only the Showtime budget, but with the combined CBS paying half the bill too, we didn't realize what we had. No, we did realize. But what we had was something special. It's gonna keep taking time. I mean, I was telling my wife this the other day. We're 6 years in on MK. I remember Luke and I would talk in the early days. I'm like, in this climate, and I've been on TV shows that were great and they got canceled. I've been on, that happens in this game. It could be out of your hands, or you could be at fault and cause it. A lot of things could happen. I never thought MK would get to 2 years. I didn't. I really didn't. I thought Luke and I would be at each other's throats because, really the foundation of the show is the Odd Couple bit. We're at 6 years and we've gone through so many up and downs. And now, now there was times we're absolutely on top. There's times where we're that cool and refreshing voice. Now maybe we're like one of the last, independent voices that'll take chances. Maybe sometimes we take too many chances. Who knows? But who's to say we don't make it to 10, 15 years? I mean, Did PTI think they were going to be along that it's crazy. You never know. I've stopped trying to plan things and I've started reacting to things and just trying to enjoy every day and make the most of every opportunity. You can't control what you can't control. All right, there you go. There you go. Yeah, this is great. This is great stuff. Okay. What do we got here? What do we got here? Nikki V just watched Pac-Man versus Barrera last night. I'm going to assume you're talking about the first fight. What a 2003 Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Pacquiao is rising, but this was supposed to be the fight where he met the real opposition. And then like this was such an incomplete Manny. You know, he hadn't developed Manila Ice, that right hand yet. This was just bad floating jab twice to set up that ridiculously fast and hard left hand. And this buzzsaw just absolutely overcame every piece of defense or counter offensive attack that MAB had. You know, and this is a Barrera who was, you know, in the midst of that feud and rivalry, the 3-fight rivalry with Morales. And yes, even in Barrera's primes, you know, he could take a loss or two and come back. And this certainly wasn't the end of his career. And, you know, they would have the rematch, which Pacquiao would win once again. But what this fight did to announce Pac-Man, I'll never forget. And I didn't watch it live. I watched it about a year and a half later because it was really 2004 when I started doing some boxing sparring and was training boxing, not to become a fighter, but just to get in shape and to just experience what this thing really is. And it was some of the best experiences I've ever had. It was awesome. It allowed me to see the sport and feel the sport at a much different understanding and level that I still hold respect to this day for everyone that steps in there. But I remember putting this on, purposely not finding out who won it, and just being like, holy crap, this guy is something I haven't seen before. And by the way, he's still going. He just did an interview yesterday in which Manny's like, I'm coming back in December. There's rumors that is like, is it Tank? Is it Rolly? Is it a rematch with Barrios? Manny's still talking about wanting to fight Floyd, as long as it's not Jake Paul, which I've also heard rumors too. I don't want that. I don't need that. Okay. Thank you. RM, dude. Thank you. RM. For extending your support to this chat. 319 already has the mega big fight feel. It really does. Despite what Brody's telling you, it really, really does. It's rare to have this much social media buzz over a week out. Does that correlate with the UFC actually trying with PR? You know, sending DDP out there to all of these locales and locations, and we're seeing interviews popping up everywhere. It's the old tried and true formula. You spend the money to promote the fight, people talk about the fight, and they really care. This fight would have sold itself, but like, I'll never forget the feeling coming into Max versus Ilya, which wasn't that long ago, where I was like a lot of you, just like overwhelmingly excited about that fight. But I looked around and just, there was nobody talking about it. There was no, you know, they had that really good face-off thing over Zoom that UFC did, but it's like, put them in a studio with Rogan in between them, or Anik between them. Let's do the old thing we used to do that sell it. I get the financial model is not to sell, or is not to worry about selling pay-per-views anymore, but I don't think that takes you away from the need to do grassroots promotion to get people fired the hell up. I love the way I feel about this fight, and I love it even more after this week. Sometimes this game is about the feel. It's how it makes you feel, right? That's why we're in this. All right. That's why we in this piece. So yeah, you're right, RM. The buzz is real and I'm feeling it and I'm here for it. And I really want to see if this monster at the end of the book is the real deal. I want to see if DDP can add yet another badass name on this ledger. This rumbling, awkward, you know, man. Jim Brewer, Long Island legend. All right. Jim Brewer is a Booney Tune. Yeah, to some people, Looney Tune now. Yeah, some people, Tiddlywinks, can say that too. He does get involved in some political dust-ups. Hey, how about Axe in the house? If you're not reading Blake Avignon, a.k.a. Axe's work on the MMA Draw or on his own Substack, get on that. He does cover a bunch of different sports, but this guy's connected. This guy's legit. I really enjoyed the piece today about what I had teased earlier. This piece fueled a lot of that the inner turmoil supposedly going on in TKO between one power that is Mark Shapiro, another power that is Nick Khan. Good piece. I really appreciate that. So shout out to that, my guy Axe right there. Sandine is back from the street corner. You missed most of the show, but we're still here for at least another 49 minutes. So thank you. Thank you for it. All right. Your notifications didn't fail you, Dave. I failed you. Okay. I changed the time a bunch of times. I didn't put it public. I'm just living my life over here. Okay. That's all it is. Signature sounds. All I want to know is who's coming. Do you know how many times I've done that bit in public? Obviously, it's a playoff of the Tom Cruise bit from Jerry Maguire, but the way that Brewer did that. I mean, I would say Half Baked is the second most quoted movie of my life outside of Tommy Boy. That's a compliment right there. You know what I mean? That's a compliment right there. What do you got, Axe? You and Luke plan to do in a watch party, arch party or watch party? Are we going to McDonald's here? What are we doing in these arches for 319? No, I mean, I'll be covering it for CBS Sports from my recliner here in the office. And I'm sure Luke will be doing live coverage on his YouTube channel. I would love a scenario in which MK trumped all and we were, and look, we were talking, there were times in early 24 where that was going to be a big part of MK's future. Watchalongs for every big fight, but I got to respect the label that pays me, the label that has been great to me for nearly a decade. So that's where that's at. You know what I'm saying? There we go. There it is. Jackson Black. The White Album is like heroin. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Let's go back to Mark Antoine. I'm here for the bit. We should do a whole Beatles pod. How about that? Beatles for Sale has some of the best first 3 songs of their discography. Dude, Beatles for Sale is so damn underrated. Is it a complete album? No. It's still in an era where they're relying too much on covers. Like, do I need a cover of Kansas City? Hey, hey, hey. No. Do I need a cover of rock and roll music? No. Do I love the cover of Buddy Holly's Words of Love? Yes. But I think I used to always say that Help was the turning point in their songwriting. That was the point where they really started to figure out what they're doing. Doesn't mean the first 3 albums aren't very good, if not 5-star albums, all of them, meaning Please Please Me with the Beatles and A Hard Day's Night. Great albums, but it's of a different time. It's of a different sound. It's of that 63, 64, 65 is when music started to change, right? But Beatles for Sale in hindsight gave us teases to that. It has some of my favorite songs on there. A top 3 song for me of all time is I'm a Loser. It is such a great little country rock jangle, and it plays into sort of that one-man heartbreak theme going on there. You've got a sleeper ballad and I'll Follow the Sun. No Reply, which kicks it off, is very underrated because it never really became like the radio hit like some of these other ones like Love Me Do, Please Please Me, Can't Buy Me Love, Ticket to Ride 8 Days a Week. You also have Babies in Black, which is one of John's best early songs and kind of dark in some degree if you really look at the lyrics. But it's the tail end of this album that always brings me back. John's I Don't Want to Spoil the Party is such a relatable song about coming off of a breakup and trying to rebound in your life. And then the 2 killer songs that no one ever talks about, Every Little Thing, which is a Paul classic, and What You're Doing, which starts off with Ringo on those boom, 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 like just it's just teasing where they're going. Great shit right there. That's why it's sort of over time become a top 3 album for me, although quality for quality, it's not in their top 5. If you're just going on like pure quality, you're going to go Abbey Road, you're going to go Revolver, you're going to go White Album, you're going to go Let It Be, right? It depends on the user. I mean, Rubber Soul, but let's never forget how great Help is, by the way. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, sir. Let's go over to Jay of Jay Allen fame, my guy, not Jay Aaron. No, not Pennington James. Jay says, just got rid of my 2010 Corolla that I've been driving for 12 years for a Dodge Ram. Ram that shit. What was your first car, favorite car owned, and dream car? So I've always, I've owned shitty cars most of my life, to be very fair. My first car ever that my dad took me to inner city Waterbury, Connecticut, the day that I started community college, my freshman year of college. So this is the first week of September 96. For $2,000 of my own money, I bought an infamous car that will forever be known as the Stallion. It was a gold 85 Chevy Celebrity that at that point in 96, when I bought it, only had 33,000 miles on it because it was driven by a lady who smoked cigarettes and took it only to church every Sunday. And there's cigarette burn marks all over the ceiling. It was a 4-door, massive mid-sized sedan that had a trunk that you could fit 3 bodies in if you had to. The back seat basically had my entire life in it at all times, multiple changes of clothes, sporting equipment of every single kind, magazines, CDs everywhere. I never locked the doors. It had the full front seat, not bucket seats, the full front seat. Had a tape player that didn't work. Luckily the radio worked, but the key feature to it was the ability to take the keys out of the ignition at any point. And then, of course, the unpredictable stalling it would do at any speed, but particularly in hectic intersections when you had to make very aggressive turns. So when I would drive to Naugatuck Valley Community College in Waterbury, Connecticut with that car, there's this point on the way there where you have to take a left turn, but the action coming at you is a highway off ramp in which people are coming 50, 60, sometimes even 70 miles an hour. Why? Because it's Waterbury, Connecticut, and people don't care. It's one of the grimiest cities in this country. I'll put it up there against any of your cities. Thank you. And on that turn, you'd slow down for it. It's like playing Frogger. You'd wait for your opening, and then you'd hit it, and the car would stall as you're sideways across the middle of it. Luckily, I became so good at restarting that thing in mid-motion and then slamming the gas and avoiding an accident every single time. It also would be one of those old school cars where if you started it and it was an automatic, but if you started it and didn't put your foot on the gas at the exact right time, you'd flood the engine and then you couldn't start it for like a half hour. So that thing was an absolute POS, but I loved it. I sold it in 99 when I bought a brand new 2000 Dodge Neon that was a bright salsa red, a very sexy car that I drove all the way until 06 when I met my wife, and she hated that car more than anything. I mean, Dodge Neons aren't known for being awesome. I drove it almost 200,000 miles. We got married. I got a minivan. I got a Honda Accord. I had this really crappy Nissan Sentra 4-cylinder that sucked the H. And then what else do we have? We had a mini Nissan SUV that sucked. Since I've made the leap to Subaru, I've been very happy. I got the Subaru Crosstrek. My wife's got a Subaru Ascent. I'm enjoying that a lot. I really am. I want to get an old guy convertible. I'm at that point now. Give me a small, or you know what? I think I'm going to step up to because my kids took over my car. So I think I'm going to step up to a new Crosstrek, but with the sport engine, because that's the only problem with this Crosstrek is there's no balls. Handles so well on the turns, compact, great on mileage. But yeah, that's about it. I've never been in a position to lead financially with a cushion where you can get something next level and feel good about yourself. I've also always looked at cars as an A to B thing and didn't really look to get an identity off of that. I would say I almost traded in my Chevy Celebrity in 99 for a minivan. And it was under the idea of, if I already have my entire life in the back seat of the Chevy Celebrity, how much more crap could I have in a minivan? Could I sleep in this minivan if I had to? You know what I mean? Could I take a group of a lot of people and do debauchery? Maybe it's good I didn't buy that. But my years when my kids were small, driving the minivan, being able to pull all the seats out and fill it up, having the TV, DVD player drop down, those were good times for a wash dad early on. Thank you. Thank you. Old man Dave only drives fast cars and fast women. Okay. Subaru, Blake says that's what you need. Dude, I have no complaints. I mean, I had Dodges. I came from a Dodge family. I had Dodges a lot. They sucked. They always sucked. Honda was good in terms of efficiency, but I never liked them. Nissan sucked. I'm a Subaru fan. What I really want to get is like a Cadillac GTS. That's really what I want to get, but we'll see one day. All right. I don't pretend to know a lot about cars or really care, to be actually fair with you. I care about 70s vinyl, 90s NBA, mental health, and this here podcast. Okay, there we go. Nikki is back. Where'd he go? He's here. Is it a he? I don't know. Nikki is welcome under any gender. Hey, BC, boxing history question. Why don't people talk more about Gerald McClellan? It's very sad what happened to him against Nigel Benn, but no one talks about him. No one talks about him because of what happened against Nigel Benn. And that was like Cotto Margarito won, another one of those fights where you're like, one of the best action fights of its era, but I feel really bad enjoying it in hindsight, right? That's the reason why we don't know how to deal with deaths and paralyzations and injury. We all, meaning fighters, media, super fans, we accept the dangers that come with this, but we actively try to ignore it. And when something happens, we don't want to deal with it. I mean, I feel so bad what happened to Pritchard Colon or the heavyweight Magomed. I mean, but we don't talk about those guys anymore. We just move on. It's hard. There's been a lot of boxing deaths in my time being a fan. And each time it's really hard. I guess I'm lucky I haven't been ringside when a boxing death happened, but I was ringside for that Magomed fight against Mike Perez at the Madison Square Garden Theater. And remember in the final 2 rounds being like, he's taking a beating. What's going on here? It's tough. It's tough, man. Luckily in MMA, this really hasn't happened. They haven't had a big death in a cage in a big moment on, national TV or something that could set the sport back. It's a dark sport. It can go south at any time. And you never know. I mean, everyone's different. Some people can take repeated head trauma. I mean, there's certain fighters that have been in, 50 wars and they talk perfectly. Then there's guys that, 38 years old are slurring their speech. Everyone's different. This game is grimy. It's also beautiful and inspiring and amazing and corrupt and backwards and broken and obscene and addictive. I love this game. All right. I love this game. Serenity now drives a Taurus. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Eesh, but that's fair. Eddie, no family truckster, the classic Chevy Chase wagon with wooden frame. So the original Vacation movie, which came out in the early 80s, Chevy Chase, which had the truckster, was maybe my dad's favorite movie of my youth that we watched 5,000 times. And I got to give my dad credit for this. It was bold. It was aggressive. It was weird. In the mid 80s, I think like 86, the car we always had growing up was a 72 Buick Electra. It was like a greenish, brownish color. And it was a boat, just an absolute boat, like just the biggest backseat of all time. And it was coming toward the end of its prime life. And my dad had this idea to cut the car in half and then put on a low riding pickup truck behind it, but not a pickup truck with high sides, with sort of low sides, so that he could put his motorcycles on the back and strap them down. And he carved into the back of it truckster. And then during a time where the yellow baby on board signs were prevalent on everybody's car, he had a yellow one that said, "Why be normal?" And, would drive me to Little League games with this, and I was down for it. My dad was hip and cool, and he had a handlebar mustache and, had 6 motorcycles and was, had tattoos and stuff. But, that was, in hindsight, that was pretty gnarly, even for 85, 86, right? That was pretty gnarly. And then he sold it, and then I never saw it again. That's the kind of thing I wish he just kept forever, and then I would eventually drive it. There we go. Let's go back to Axe. So let me ask you, he says, let me ask you a question, Axe. Shapiro and Dana are working to have Zuffa replace Top Rank in the ESPN boxing slot. I have heard that aggressively. Your thoughts on what this means? Well, it depends, because I've also heard fairly aggressively that TKO would prefer ESPN to be agnostic, to would be, excuse me, not agnostic, to be exclusive in all of combat sports. And that could be part of the contention of what is holding up this deal, or the UFC deal, from happening. And I think obviously the Zuffa boxing deal is largely connected. It's a piece of this larger UFC deal. As long as it doesn't mean full exclusivity, and ESPN, which I hear from multiple sources, is very interested in staying in boxing, as long as it remains an open outlet for anyone potentially, it serves a very, very key role in American boxing right now at a time when American boxing is really struggling, at a time when, 80% of American boxing is on DAZN to begin with, which only hardcore boxing fans have in the US. And look, it's ESPN, right? Like that enough said right there. But I would absolutely love, because let's be honest, the era of exclusive promoter network contracts is thankfully dying. Thankfully. And it does need a change. Like, as much as we're fighting the TKO Ali Act change for certain fear reasons, like, let's not forget what Logan Dobson said on Inside the Box, whether you agree with him or not. It's not like we love the default of where we're at right now. Like, boxing could use change. I really think American boxing could use some level of return to the identity that HBO boxing was in the 80s. Well, really what it became. I mean, obviously in the 80s it was king, but like what it really became in the late 90s, early 2000s, when it was there was the major leagues of boxing. Yeah, Showtime was still there, and they were a key role as a 1B to the 1A. But HBO was 1A. It didn't matter what promoter you were with or who you were. If the fight was big enough, they'd pay for it, and you're fighting on HBO, and that's the major leagues. And I guess you could argue right now, is Turkey and Riyadh season the new major leagues to some degree? Yes, but that's pulling all the big fights out of the US more often than not. I would love, even if ESPN gets with Zuffa Boxing. Zuffa Boxing at its core is going to be, and Mark Shapiro talked about this again on the earnings call yesterday for TKO. It's going to be like one fight card a month. It's going to take them a while to build up that side of it, while they're also simultaneously doing 2 to 3. Now, Shapiro yesterday said 2 to 3 Netflix super fights per year. I would love if, I don't mind, look, whether Zuffa Boxing goes to ESPN or Warner or Paramount or wherever, like, let's give it a chance. Let's see what it does there. But I think ESPN, if you're a boxing fan, could have the potential to become sort of a perfect, anyone who doesn't have a home, but can produce fighters for really big fights. Let's put it on there, because everybody's got it. And they have that arm where they can promote it through SportsCenter in ways that you can't promote it. Like, that's the biggest problem with these big fights being on DAZN. DAZN doesn't have a footprint outside of their own streaming closed circle there. You know what I mean? It's not like DAZN has a cable channel, one channel after ESPN, where they're promoting all these things. So, interesting question. We'll see what happens. Tiddlywinks, TKO going to buy BKFC too. I have not heard that, but I actually would I be against that? I mean, I'm against the idea that one company or promotion owns everything. Yeah, I'm against that. But I do want to see BKFC get, especially with Triller falling apart, their parent company, I want to see them get the funding and chance that they have to meet their ceiling, to find out how good they can be. It's a weird little circle there, but it works at times, especially for the really big events. So I would like to see them, wherever they're going here, figure out how to get there and get the right connections to do it. All right, what else we got here? This is Ben Badge. We love Ben Badge in these parts. Thank you, sir. Why don't MMA fighters jab technical disadvantage? To me, it's not just the jab. The counterpart to that is head movement and a commitment to defense. I cannot believe 32 years into this sport, and was there NHB fights before UFC launched in 93 in some form? Yes, but obviously, like, modern day MMA as we know it started in 93 with the launch of UFC 1. So if we say that we're 32 years into this game, it's just mind-numbing to me how many elite fighters are still walking straight line in, hands down, chin out, and what you're saying there. I mean, even how long ago did GSP add Freddie Roach to his corner ahead of the Koscheck rematch, in which he just basically is like, I'm just going to take, it's the same thing that happened, by the way, in that Gennady Golovkin David Lemieux pay-per-view, where Golovkin calculatingly thought, look, Lemieux has one chance, that huge left hook. What if I just jab him for 12 rounds and completely take it away from him because he doesn't have a good boxing IQ? It's the same thing that GSP did to Koscheck in the rematch. How do I limit the danger of what this guy brings? Let me stick this thing in the same spot over and over again. I know that sounds gross. No diddy. But like, let me just do that until he's got a busted eye and GSP wins the fight. Yeah, it's wild to me. Maybe part of it is because, sorry, itchy nose. Not picking my nose, not doing cocaine yet. Just have the itchy nose there. All right, thank you. Maybe it's because there's so many aspects of this game you have to learn to be a truly elite fighter, but the fact that this isn't part of that foundation for people, it's wild to me. The ones that do show it, like how did Sean Strickland go from who we thought was kind of like a quasi contender with holes in his game to being this suddenly unique force that became champion? Well, yeah, because his unique style of crowding people, but like the head movement, the strong boxing. I mean, it matters. It's the jab is the most important punch in all of combat, the most important strike in all of combat sports, or combat sports where you're allowed to strike. You know what I mean? Like it is. It just is. It just is. Thank you. Thank you. Mark Antoine, can we get the Wish You Were Here MK merch online? Dude, okay, thank you for saying that. I've got the Wish You Were Here poster over here. You already know when I did the top 5 on the BCX of my favorite album covers, I think I said Axis Bold as Love is my favorite, and it really is. I mean, where's my phone? Okay. I mean, what are we talking about here? The best album cover of all time. Why does it look yellow in this? It's orange. All right. But Wish You Were Here, as I've said many times, is first of all, it's such a great album and arguably the best Pink Floyd album. It's my favorite Pink Floyd album, but that cover just speaks to me, man. I love that cover. It just like, I really get symbolism from looking at it. You're right. For all of the great things we've done on MK merch, from Super Wash Bros to, Beavis and Butthead to all that stuff, we need, whether it's Average Joe Art or it's Long Island Luke getting it done, we need a Wish You Were Here album cover with Luke and BC. Because when I look at that album cover, I see MK, right? Luke on the left, me on the right on fire. I also see it as my own brain. You know what I mean? There's the side of me that's sort of sane and normal and calculated and cautious. And then there's the artsy, ridiculous side in all of us, to be fair. Thank you very much. Back to Jay. Thank you, sir, for your contributions to this great podcast. Just got rid of my... we just hit that. Thank you, sir. Fantastic work. Back to Devin Tuck. Tuck that Mangine in. Thank you, sir. Have you ever crossed paths with someone evil? Wow. Yeah, I have. I don't know the specific nature of what you're asking here, but do I consider myself as a Christian spiritually sensitive? Yes. Have I seen, felt, and experienced things that are almost too crazy to share publicly that you'd probably think I'm a wacko? Yes. I've been through some ish in my life, whether drug fueled, whether just... Look, there's a spiritual attack on our souls, in my opinion, at all times. Have I come across people that I can feel the energy? Yes. That sometimes I can see it in their eyes? Yes. I have some stories, and I found this out the hard way in certain areas when I shared it publicly in certain circles, and people just like, yeah, I've seen some shit, guys. Okay. There's some of this stuff is very, very, very real, but I don't know specifically, Devin, what you're asking me there. Thank you. Tiddlywinks. Luke after 3 margaritas deep gets kind of evil. Yeah. In a very fraternity Marine style. There you go. Serenity. Now, Luke is dead. Well, a lot of people piling on LT here. Luke is dead behind the eyes in person, isn't he? No, Luke has a warm and beautiful heart. He really does. Does Luke have his own challenges? Is Luke gruff in certain areas? Yes, all that stuff is true. Even beyond the times that he's playing it up, we all do. But Luke will tell you himself he's been through some trauma that he's still working on. I mean, we're all still working on. I mean, it's like ultimately, no matter what age you are, if you're going through some shit and you go and sit down in therapy, it's always going to lead back to your upbringing and things you haven't, put away or dealt with. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. I mean, I'll tell you the story one day of this party I went to, and I walked in on I'll tell you that one day. All right. Remind me of the party in the woods remind me of that one day and we'll get to that. All right. Let's keep it. We can't bring down the mood here today with this. Okay. I've met me evil straight. I walk. Yeah. All right. Tiddlywinks. Joe Rogan says it's I don't think you're talking to me. There's a lot of conversations going on at once here. Some of them are happening. Eyes Wide Shut party. No, it was a party at some chick's dad's house, and that chick's dad was into very dark things, and I stumbled into something, but we'll get into that another time. All right. Thank you, Tuck, for that question. Let's go back over to our guy, Jay. Best boxer or boxers to never hold a major world title. It's a somewhat of a tricky question because so much of boxing's history in the 20th century was when there was one recognized champion or in some cases two recognized champions. And then you fast forward to now and the 3 and then now 4 belt era. And not only are there 4 champions per weight class, you get the shenanigans from the sanctioning bodies where there's the interim regular super. I mean, it's all bullshit, right? I'm not here to besmirch Adrian Broner, but he's going to be able to say at the end of his career that he's a 4 division champion, even though how many of those came against active champions and not just vacant title bouts against the next guy in line. So it's hard to say. It really is hard to say. I think you certainly can go to eras like 1970s heavyweight, which was so deep, 1990s heavyweight, which was so deep, and specifically pick out guys that were close, that were in title fights, but never could get over the top. But it's hard for me to just off the top of my head pick out sort of that short list because of how different the sport has changed, because of how, I mean, even when a secondary title in a division is at stake on TV, they present it like it's the real title. The ring announcers, you know, under pressure of the sanctioning bodies won't say, this is for the WBA regular secondary. They'll just say, this is for the WBA championship of the world. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. Not to mention that there's 4 of them. It's the same issue I have with high school athletics. You know, I'm in a small state of Connecticut. My kids compete now, and they have, you know, a system here where they put the schools in order of size. So whether it's basketball, whether it's track and field, whatever, there's class L, there's class L. Those are the large and extra large. There's M. Sometimes in some sports, there's double M. And then there's S for the small schools. And, you know, in basketball in particular, you know, it's not like an open tournament like the state of Indiana used to have, where a small school could be in there against a powerhouse school and we find out who's the best team. But it's like, you know, when you say, well, I was a state champion in the mile, even in a small state like Connecticut, you may be the class S state class champion in the mile. That also might mean you're the 21st fastest miler in this small state. So it's like, yeah, you're a state champion, but do you know what I'm saying? We do have in some sports a state open meet, usually in the individual sports like swimming, tennis, track, where then you really find out where you are against everybody in there. But that comparison is the same in modern boxing, where the proliferation of belts just really kills that vibe. It's certainly different than in the UFC, where you can be like, where we actually have sort of a working list of the best fighters, from Dan Henderson to Uriah Faber to Joseph Benavidez, Dustin Poirier, who never actually were official undisputed champions, even though that's complicated too, because obviously Dan Henderson was on top in Pride. He won a title in Strikeforce, and Faber the same thing in WEC. So hard to fully answer that if you get my drift on that. Thank you. Good question here from Brody. But, you know, you got to give Canada's Brody some credit. He's prolific in this chat. He's inappropriate largely, but he's got good questions. And he's not afraid to push back on the BC. BC, I'm seeing people on Twitter talk like Crawford beating Canelo is a foregone conclusion. Thank you for bringing this up. Have people lost their minds? Canelo is going to seriously hurt this guy. I have come back around to where you are right now. The reason why people are saying this, of course, plays into the fact that Canelo is getting older. It's certainly not A+ Canelo anymore. And you can really pick apart his weakening level of competition, which is coinciding with almost a comfortability in going the decision and winning. Berlanga fight, Munguia fight, Charlo fight, right? And it's coming off of a stretch of a couple fights where he had that wrist injury that never fully healed, that compromised his training, and then we didn't really see the badass Canelo. Guys, we're going to see the badass Canelo again. I'm not going to say that he's going to be the same Canelo from 2019 or 2022, but he's going to be extremely motivated to leave no stones unturned because of the size of this fight, because he never originally wanted this fight, whether it's either because he knows he won't get full credit because it's a smaller guy, or if it's because he actually does know that Bud is a one of one in his own right and does have a shot at winning this. And yes, Bud does have a shot at winning this. But how do you watch Bud's debut at 54 against Madrimov, where I give Bud full credit for dipping into his bag, for leaning on his experience and finding a way to win a very difficult fight? But how do you watch that and the trouble he had against that, and then ask him to go up 2 more weight classes against a still pound for pound Canelo and be like, oh yeah, he's either going to walk through him, which he won't, or he's going to box circles around him. Now the boxing part could be in play, not impossible. Bud is certainly extra special. Bud's also going to be 38 years old. That I think we also have to add in. Bud has been incredibly inactive. He beat Spence in the summer of 23, beat Madrimov in the summer of 24. We have not seen him again since. So it's weird. Right after Crawford beat Spence, I had this feeling like, you know what? If he had the balls to do it, maybe he could pull one over on Canelo. I feel like we're now 2 years after that. And even though Canelo is sliding, and I'm not going to act like he isn't sliding, I think people are overplaying the idea that Canelo's done, or that I think some of it, when you get to this point, is completely in relation to the level of competition. Once Canelo realized against Jermell that Jermell wasn't there to fight to the death, he cruised to an easy win. He carried Munguia down the stretch. Berlanga was tougher to finish than we expected, because he really came in there confident and aggressive and strong. Canelo still dominated the fight and dropped him, but it plays into that narrative of, yeah, maybe Canelo was sort of okay with just going the distance there and winning another one and cashing another big check and adding to his resume. And then against William School, he's like, F this, I'm not chasing this guy. The Canelo of old, see the Lara fight, would have chased him down. But I also think he realized, why am I going to do that right now and have a chance of looking bad? So I don't put anything past Bud coming in here and doing something super special and being fully ready and giving problems to Canelo. But the idea that he's going to come over the top and beat him, I mean, Canelo to me is going to have to show up washed for that to happen. Is it in play? Could it happen? Yes, Bud is a all-time great. And I do believe that. And I think we were robbed of seeing that over a long period of time because of the promotional side that he was on. He was on the wrong side of the street during a great welterweight era. Luckily, we got the Sean Porter fight. Luckily, we got the Spence fight. And while I don't want to take away from the Spence win because it was so wonderful and so beautiful and it made Luke Thomas cry, every day that goes by, I wonder more and more how damaged that version of Errol Spence was, sucking down to that weight class one more time. And it's not an excuse. It's not meant to take away from Bud, but it is meant to sober up to like the idea that wasn't the Spence we all knew in that fight. That was a younger version of Bud in the biggest fight of his life, who came in there and would have beaten anybody that night and would have had a great shot at beating anybody in history that night. I'm not debating that. But that was extremely one-sided in ways that still baffle me. I'm now at the point where I love this fight. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how their styles and size match up together. But I'm not one of these people that are like, foregone conclusion, Bud's going to win. You want to make the hipster Bud upset pick? I got no problem with that. He's going to have quicker feet than Canelo. He's got longer arms than you realize. He can punch more for a guy his size than he probably should. He's got a backbone. He's mean. All of these things are true. Canelo's not 45, guys. All right? Like, Canelo knows this game. Can we put some respect on Big Red? The same Big Red that I'm still angry at over Benavidez? Yes, true. But thank you. Thank you for saying that. You don't have to agree, though. Shout out to Harden. Bud will beat Canelo. Count on it. Okay? That's why we got to see it, though. That's, to be fair, that's why we got to see it. And look, I'm glad that they're making this massive. I'm glad it's Allegiant Stadium. I'm glad it's on Netflix. This really is the perfect fight to find out if Dana White and Zuffa Boxing and UFC can come in here and do something different or do something special or just put on a great card. I'm ready. I'm ready to find out. All right. Did you hear the rumors on the undercard? I don't know if it's true. It wasn't ascribed to anybody, but people talking about Callum Walsh maybe fighting one of the Vargas kids. Fernando Emiliano. That'd be wild, right? That'd be wild. Big ups, BC. Yeah, thank you, my G. Thank you, EST 7-8 Michael Lobo. Thank you, bro. Thank you. That's just my opinion, though. Counter me, Nikki. What do you got? I think Bud will beat him, but Canelo has a granite chin. Yes, big part of it. And if he's going to beat him, I think Bud has to really slow down the fight and make Canelo chase. Basically, don't stink it up like William School, but also take the foundation of what William School did and just pepper in more offense. You have to make Canelo upset, angry, and chasing you. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, remember that time that Kamaru was pound for pound number 1 and was like, yeah, I'm going to go beat that guy. God, good Lord. It's still embarrassing to me as a guy who likes both combat sports, love boxing, have really enjoyed my time watching and covering MMA. It still kind of angers me of the way that's structured, that we have seen so many big time UFC guys that when they finally get to the top of the mountain, whether it's Usman, O'Malley, insert name, McGregor too, that their first idea is let me cash out and go get my ass kicked in boxing because I'm going to get paid 10 times more than I ever would here. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Big Papa Key Papa is here. Thank you. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm very happy. Yes. I'm very happy. Thank you, Tatsura Tyro. All right. Hammy Sammy. If Canelo lands a solid shot, Bud is going to the stanky leg. This is, dude, Canelo can punch. And I never thought Canelo was going to go up to, dude, there were times when Canelo was lingering at 155, which Rafe used to call Canelo weight. I think it's hilarious. And he was waiting out Golovkin. Let's not act like he wasn't, to some degree. I was like, we always question if Canelo could even be a legit middleweight. To his credit, not only did he win a title at 75, dude, he's a legitimate puncher at 68. He's so damn solid, and he has one of the best chins in modern history, and he's super smart. And even though he's slowing down, he's not ineffective. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Old man Dave supporting me right here. Sorry for all those prostitution jokes. Sandine in the house of the JBR fame. What did you serve in the armed forces, Sandine? In the mess hall? What were you, a Marine? Something like Army? Something like that. Coast Guard? Did you give up on the idea of channel memberships for time being? No, I haven't given up on anything I want to do on this channel. But just the reality is I'm a very busy man. The reality is you know what I mean? I host a popular podcast. I've got a full-time job at CBS. Some weeks are busier than others. Kids I'm taking to college visits left and right. Trying to get this lawn mowed and, go on date lunches with my wife. So yeah, I got to have a power talk with Mikey and kind of put some of these ideas that we keep talking about into order. I probably should have channel memberships. I'd love to provide some members only content. There are some weeks that I'm like, why am I doing this channel? But then we do one of these and I'm like, man, this was great. So I should be doing more content. I should be doing more thoughtful content. I've kind of gone away from that. Some weeks it's fun to just roll out the balls, talk the box with Rafe, interview a fighter, and do this with you. I'll come around. It's coming. It's coming together. Okay. One day at a time. Let me talk to Nocita. He knows what he's doing on his channel. I'll give that guy a lot of credit. Nocita's a great guy. If you guys don't realize that, yeah, Luke Nocita is one of the best. All right. Ben Badge, appreciate you as always. Do we ever see Janabek Alimkhanuly versus Chris Eubank Jr., who could be the next unified champion at the 154 crazy division? Bakram could be top 3. All right, let's go one by one on here. Do we see Janabek at 160 against Eubank? It's not impossible. What I really need to see, so do both fighters, so does the sport. Can we just do Janabek versus Adames already? I don't know what the holdup is. They talk trash on Twitter all the time, accuse each other of running. I don't know if it's a priority fight for Turkey. I don't know if he's mad at Adames for exposing his boy, Shiraz. I do know Chris Eubank is going to fight Ben a second time on November 15th at Tottenham Hotspurs Stadium. I do know that if Eubank wins again, he's certainly going to be high on the list for a Canelo fight, as is Khamzat Chimaev. As long as Canelo wants that fight, I hope he would. I hope he wouldn't look at Shiraz and go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to stay being this Canelo the Ducker. I hope not. Also, I don't know what's going to happen. If Canelo beats Bud, does Canelo just go back to 68 like business? Probably. But what happens if he loses? I don't know. Some things have to happen. I mean, Janibek has not been a turkey fighter yet. So, no, I don't think we see Elam Canuli versus Eubank. I think Eubank is going to try to get big money Canelo fight. I could see him going against Khamzat Chimaev, by the way, because, Eubank can fight at 68. I don't know. The division isn't sexy enough to really warrant all of these unifications as a priority for these promoters at the moment. So no. Next question. Who could be the next unified champion at the 154? Fundora he had 2 of 4 belts. He had to drop one. Zayas has one. Bud has one. Bakram Murtazaliev has one. Unfortunately, no one picked up the Murtazaliev versus Erickson Lubin fight. I thought PBC was going to pick that up. I forgot that Lubin's no longer a PBC fighter. He's now under the Pro Box banner. So that's going to purse bid. So we'll see where that fight ends up. But in terms of who could be the next unified champion, I'm going to say Boots Ennis. I'm going to say Boots Ennis at 54. Fundora, obviously, with already 1 belt and previously having 2, if he gets in there with Zayas, he's going to be the next unified champion. He's in the conversation. I think Fundora, Virgil, or Boots are the elite in this class, in this weight division. But there are a lot of interesting players on the secondary level, which is fun. Which one of those players will stick their head up to the highest level in F around? We'll see. We're winding it down here and appreciate you guys very much, as always. Telvin, my man from Hawaii. Okay, that's my guy right there. Smoking ice with Dog, the bounty hunter there in the Lava Shack parking lot. BC, your thoughts on WWE signing with UFC, and does this mean UFC is signing back with ESPN? Also, dead wrong on Monday. I know I'm probably going to get dead wrong tomorrow a bunch of times for this. You're right. Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air I assigned his voice to the wrong Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character, and I apologize for that. Now, Telvin, I did hit this earlier, but let me look, my thoughts are this is massive for TKO. This is I mean, think about it. I mean, WWE is not just getting coverage on ESPN, all of the pay-per-views will be on there. And now that they're launching this new, individual set aside ESPN thing, that's a big power move to bring in a large non-traditional sports audience. It makes a lot of sense. Like I said, given how many ESPN people are now, ex-ESPN people are now high-ranking executives in the new WWE. To your specific part about, does this mean UFC is signing back? I almost believe 100% that UFC will end up giving you 4 to, and I'm guessing based on what you hear, but I'm guessing 4 to 6 super fight-ish big big events on Netflix. ESPN will get, if not the rest, this is my guess, if not the rest of the package, a major chunk of that package. I think part of them dangling Zuffa Boxing is probably to sweeten up ESPN wanting to get more. But I do wonder if a third entity, whether that was Paramount, Warner, I wonder if a third entity will get a small. I mean, obviously they're looking at what the NFL has done, NBA has done. Ideally, when you get brands this big, you want to spread them around. You want to be making as much money as possible. You also want to be flooding the market to block out your competitors. So, yes, I think UFC will be on ESPN and will be there in a very big way. I could see, like I said, Netflix taking the small handful of really big ones and ESPN getting the rest. So we'll see what happens right there. Harden says Netflix is the future, ESPN is not. Well, Netflix is only the future for the really big. I mean, they repeatedly say this, that they don't want to go exclusive with anyone. They only want the really big events. But if you read places like the MMA Draw, you will, Axe, Zach Arnold, all those type of guys, you will find out, apparently, reported, that UFC was going to give the entire package to Netflix, and they were going to take it until negotiations for Canelo versus Bud happened with Bella Netflix, and Turkey ran his mouth, and then damage control was needed, and that means must call Nick Khan to come in and fix it. So Netflix is certainly the future for super big events, whether that is Jake Paul's huge, the Mike Tyson or the huge women's card, whether that is Canelo-Crawford and the 2 to 3 that Mark Shapiro said Zuffa Boxing will do on there, or whether that is how many UFC ones end up. They want the type of events that are the super premier. So that is why that's the future. But I don't believe they're the future in general, because that's not the model they want to be a part of. It's kind of going away. This idea of one promotion on one network and we're in bed together and that's it. That's going away. And boxing kind of ruined that to a large degree, to be fair. All right. Let's wrap it up here. MMA Fanatic, thank you. Great question here. What were your feels watching Tim Bradley versus Ruslan Provodnikov? I'll never forget it. And what's your opinion of Bradley overall? Tim Bradley is one of my 5 favorite fighters of all time. He is my favorite interview in my him or Bernard Hopkins are my favorite interview in my boxing journalism career. I love Tim Bradley. I love that his resume became rounded out enough as a 2-division champion and one of the, super elites at 40 and 47 in his time, for somebody that really had no power, yet fought in a boxer puncher, but, fought in a very aggressive style. An insane chin, an insane work ethic, an insane dad in his corner in Big Ray, Tim Sr., but they call him Big Ray. I love that he got in the Hall of Fame. I love him as an announcer, even though he can be over the top, sure. But I love the stances he takes and that he's willing to give an opinion right there. But you really have to understand the motivation that led to this fight. Tim Bradley goes in there against Manny Pacquiao in their first fight in 2012. Badly injures both legs during the fight, like badly, where people would normally pull out. Bites down, fights his ass off. Look, did he beat Pacquiao? No. Brian Kenny was wrong. No, it didn't. It didn't happen. I had it 8-4 Pacquiao. I never felt like that was a hard fight to score. But he gets the controversial win. He went through hell after that. He got death threats. Everyone was almost blaming him for the win, blaming him for celebrating the win. That wasn't fair. So he boiled up all of those emotions and looked at this fight. And remember, at that point, Provodnikov was not considered an elite. He was considered a Friday night fights level fun brawler who, was not on that level. Let me double check. I don't believe he had fought and won the title against Alvarado up to that point and then lost it to Algeria in the controversial fight. I believe this was Ruslan's first really big fight above water at the elite level. Let me see. Yes. Before that, he had beaten old Chop Corley in Russia, and he was doing the Friday night fights bit. Like literally in Thompson Boxing in the parking lot in Corona, California of the company that Richard Thompson owned, the warehouse. Like they put a ring in his parking lot of his factory. That's what they used to do. So he basically said, F it. I'll show all you guys. He said, I'm going to kill this kid. That's literally what his thought process was. I'm going to go in there and kill this kid. So he goes in there with no effort at defense, no effort at anything but, oh, you guys think I don't have power. You think I robbed Manny, blah, blah, blah. And because of that chip on his shoulder, he gives us a modern classic, a fight so good that it's almost a shame that it came 2 years after Pacquiao Marquez 4 in the same, 10-year period as Corrales Castillo and the Gotti Wards and all that. That basically what I'm saying is, while we definitely recognize this as a top 5 fight of this century and of the modern era, I almost wish it could be the fight of the era because it was so freaking gnarly and insane. And even though Bradley would pull himself back together for a couple rounds and finally box from the outside and win with the jab, he kept getting pulled in. I have never seen a fighter more consistently concussed in a fight and just fight through it. He said there were times he couldn't even see and he's just throwing punches. Is there an argument for Ruslan to win? Of course. Bradley wins a very close fight. I remember just being like, I cannot believe this is happening. I cannot believe this video game fight is playing off, mostly because we all knew Bradley was a lot better than Ruslan. I didn't see what came after that when Ruslan went in there and stopped Mike Alvarado to win the title in Denver, when he, had big fights after that and fought it for a short season, fought at a pretty damn high level as just a savage. One of the craziest interviews I've ever heard was in the week after this fight. And by the way, this fight fucked Tim Bradley up physically and mentally, as it should, right? He did a radio interview with Max Kellerman on ESPN LA radio. And Max really asked some deep-rooted, great questions. And Tim went on this rant where he said, I came home from this fight and I went up to my dad and I was like, this is your fault. This is your fault. You did this to me. Almost like you raised me to be such a freaking maniac savage. And by the way, Big Ray's so hilarious. If you didn't watch HBO 24/7 when Tim Bradley was on top, when they'd be at the track training and Big Ray would be like, Tim, what's that? What do I smell? And Tim's like, what are you talking about, Dad? He's like, I smell pussy. You're being a bitch. Like, Big Ray get on him. And he was like, I mean, this is theater, this fight. This is insanity. And from Tim Bradley to go from the physical and mental damage of this fight, coming off a period of depression and craziness after the Manning fight, and then go directly, like 4 months later, into a pay-per-view against a Juan Manuel Marquez who's fresh off of turning Manny Pacquiao's lights off with one punch. One of my favorite fights, one of the pay-per-view classics that doesn't get talked about, was that split decision win, Tim Bradley over Juan Manuel Marquez on pay-per-view on HBO. That was it wasn't a full-on war. There was pockets of it, but Bradley going in there and just gnarly navigating as a boxer puncher and figuring it out. That's his best and biggest win of his career. Manny Pacquiao's a bigger win. He didn't beat him. He fought really well at times in that second fight, even though he was injured again against Pacquiao. And I give him a lot of credit. He wore the camouflage trunks because he came in there to go to war. Tim Bradley is one of the great overachievers. Never got to fight Amir Khan at 140. Missed out on fighting, in my opinion, Mayweather and all the early PBC welterweights because he stayed loyal to Top Rank. But to be fair, Top Rank continuously overpaid him to keep him there because they knew they can make big fights with him against Marquez and with him ultimately in a trilogy against Pacquiao. Tim Bradley was one of the great overachievers, one of the most honest quotes, and a true man. And I have nothing but respect for him. Thank you. All right, this is great. This was great. I got to go walk the dogs with my lady. Final one from Nick. Thank you for playing. Thank you for supporting. Nick says, I asked about Salvador Sanchez on Inside the Box yesterday. Hell yeah. I went back and watched the fights. So good. So we talked about the Azuma Nelson fight that a 23-year-old Salvador Sanchez knocked out the Hall of Famer Azuma Nelson in the 15th round at MSG 3 weeks before dying in a car crash at the age of 23. Along with the Wilfredo Gomez win, like one of the best wins of this guy. 23 years old, 44, 1-1, and he went into the Hall of Fame. What could have been? Any boxer that had potential that was cut short. Yeah, there's definitely a handful of guys that could have / should have been great. Although he was a wild card, Edwin Valero's in this conversation too, right? He would go on to, unfortunately, a Chris Benoit type family murder-suicide that's unforgivable and unforgettable and just awful. But Valero was 27-0 with 27 KOs from Venezuela, and he was crazy, and he had crazy power as a southpaw. And they were going to make a fight with him and Manny Pacquiao, and it would have been corrosive and explosive and amazing. And Pacquiao would have won, but it would have been awesome. I always wondered how good that guy could have become or could have been. I mean, who else is there off the top of my head? This is a great question in a great category, but I mean, I could say Paul Williams, the welterweight who unfortunately is in a wheelchair, but I felt like ever since that Sergio Martinez knockout, and maybe that absolute war and that classic that Paul Williams had against Antonio Margarito on Carson, California, where in hindsight, maybe Margarito's gloves were loaded in that one too. Maybe that fight was a war. That was probably absolute prime Paul Williams. That's the guy that I wish would have fought Floyd. What I'm saying here is right before his accident that robbed the rest of his career, I think you started to see him sliding down the second half as he was moving up in weight. But I would have loved it. I mean, Vernon Forrest passed away, but he passed away sort of the same situation where he was on the downhill as well. I'm trying to think of, you nailed it, Brody. You are a good member of this chat. Dimitri Pirog, who sent Danny Jacobs to hell with a left hook and would have been a problem for Gennady Golovkin. You're damn right. You are damn right on that. Thank you very much. Say it, Brody. We all know he would have given Triple G. That would have been a hellacious fight. Amazing. I also have to bring in the name of Ike Ibeabuchi, who is out of prison for rape after a long time and is having a comeback fight in his 50s, I think this weekend or real soon, against Danny Williams. The same Ike Ibeabuchi, 6'5", jacked heavyweight, fast hands, power in both hands. The same guy that went 12 rounds with David Tua in the CompuBox record for most punches attempted in a heavyweight bout combined. If that guy didn't go to jail, remember, he's entering into the weakest era of heavyweight ever. That guy maybe could have been something special. Yeah. There we go. Two Chang's nose. Thank you. Paul Williams was so good. Vernon was still capable. Yes. Remember, he got upset by Sergio Mora, then won it in the rematch. But I don't know if he was ever the same after the Mayorga knockout, to be fair. I mean, the version of Vernon Forrest that beat Shane Mosley twice, that version was pound for pound top 3, and that version was great. That's Al Heyman's first big time fighter. And it's a shame, of course, how the death and how it happened and all of that. But all right, that's it. That's all I can do here today. Thank you guys. Great chat today. I enjoyed the crap out of this. BC sending Ike I did. I sent him emails in prison. I did. It happened. I'm BC. I love the box and I love you guys. Thank you so much. I'll be back. I think next week's rough. I'm going to find out if I can do this next week. We got pregame preview next Thursday. I got to do some college visits with the kids. We'll find out. Hopefully we can do this again next week. I'll keep you informed. Take care of yourself. Seriously, take care of yourself. All right. Put this first. Let's go. I ran 4 miles the last 2 days. I'm back. I'm on the comeback. Okay. I'm on the comeback right here. I can't sleep at night because my legs are throbbing, but you don't care about that. We out of here. I'm going to play this. I always give you the Carol Hall, right? You want the Carol Hall? You got it.
Personal, whatever you want to do to bond. We
So are you
cut
married?
this out later. No. Are you?
No.
Good. All right, switch places. You have 11 points. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff here. Let's see the best outro ever. And